Welcome back to another episode with the Bearded Specialist. Today we're going to be talking about how to make a network cable, patch cable, RJ45 connector. Some people also refer to this as an Ethernet cable, a straight pass-through cable. Either way, these terms are interchangeable, and I just wanted to do a quick how-to on it. So in my hands I have a blue jacketed 4-pair Cat 6 cable. This is a piece of scrap that was left over from a job. You can order this in a variety of colors. We've also got the EZ RJ45 crimp tool, and then we've got the EZ RJ45 crimp connector. Some people will refer to this as a tip, a network tip, Cat 6 tip, Cat 5 tip. A lot of these terms get used interchangeably. If we look at this RJ45 connector up close, you can see the copper pins. These pins have teeth on them that when we use the crimp tool, they will bite down into the conductor. On the left-hand side, where my thumb is, that is a clamp that when you crimp down, it bites into the outer jacket to hold it in place and keep it from moving. We've also got a tab on one side. That way when you plug it into a device or a port, it'll hold the wire in place. So you want to make sure that you don't break that tab off when you're making these crimps. On the end that you see right here, facing towards you where the teeth are, there's an opening for the wires to slide through. That's what makes this an EZ RJ45 connector instead of just a standard RJ45 connector. This helps with production in terms of being able to make more tips more quickly, saving your job time so that you can make more money. So if we look at this tool, this RJ45 crimp tool that I have, you can see a little bit of rust on it. It's definitely see some use. I've had this for probably 8 or 9 years. The razor blade on the end, that can be used for stripping, that can be for cutting wire. It can be changed out if needed with just 2 standard Phillip head screws. I don't use it very often. I typically just use a pair of strippers. There's also a 6-pin and 8-pin crimp. We're only going to be using the 8-pin for this. This also has a razor blade on it. If you order the kit, it will come with replacement blades. I have yet to have to replace my blade. It's the same original blade that's there. If you have this tool, I recommend keeping it somewhere where it's not going to get banged around too much so that blade doesn't get knocked out of balance or out of whack or chipped, because then it's not going to cut the wires flush mount. We got the standard pouch as usual. We're going to be pulling out a set of our strippers, and we will be pulling out a terminal screwdriver. So going back to making the cable, we have the blue jacketed 4-pair cable. You're going to want to make sure you straighten it out a little bit. Try not to cut off any labels if the wire is labeled. If it's been pulled into a building and you've got 50 to a couple hundred or a couple thousand into the same closet. We're just going to take our strippers, or you could do this with the crimp tool, and we are going to score the outer jacket. We're not going to cut into it. We're just scoring it. That way it's not nicking the internal conductors. Then we're going to wiggle it back and forth a little bit and then pull it apart. It's got a nice standard cut, nice and clean. Inside this we have a string. That string is used to strip back the jacket. That way if you needed to have more exposed conductor, that's the fastest, easiest way to do it. It's usually useful if you're doing punch down panels. Then we have this center white piece that's to add to the strength of the cable, make it more stable, easier to push. That can come in hard plastic or the soft plastic like you see there, depending on what you order from the manufacturer. So now we're going to get into the actual color coding of the wiring. So you've got orange, blue, brown, and green. Very important colors. Try not to mix them up. There's a standard color coding that goes with all Cat 5 networking. I could go over all the inner working details, but I'm trying to keep this video as short and concise as possible. So we're just going to go over the predominantly used color code that I would say 90% of the time that you're out in the field, you're going to use for anything that you're doing. As you can see right here on the white wire is marked in this case with an orange stripe. That is not always the case. Depending on the cost of the wire, where you get it from, that white wire may be white on every single one of those. So if you mix them up, you're just going to have to start over from scratch as far as stripping it back and making sure you keep track of which white wire ends up where. On some cheaper Cat 5 wire and Cat 6 wire that was ordered, the white wire's stripe that marks it and identifies it actually came off when I was running my hand across it to straighten it out. So just be very aware of where your wires end up. And right there you see I untwisted the base of the blue, and then I stuck my terminal screwdriver into the base, pulled on it and that helps straighten it out. Some people like to do that. It makes the process faster for them. The only concern is you might nick the wire and cause a short. I typically just untwist it by hand and then go on from there. So now that our wires are untwisted, we can go over the color coded that we're going to be using. We're going to be using orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. That is the standard color code that you're going to be using for any of these cables that you make, whether it's a patch cable or a full-on network cable that runs between the switch and your device, or the switch and a cube or laptop, computer, whatever the case may be for your specific job site. As you can see, I like to sort of pre-position my wires, make sure they're fully untwisted, and then once I've made sure that my color code is still relatively accurate, then I'm going to start pulling on them to straighten them out individually, and then you'll see me grab it by the base and pull them together. As I pull them together, again, I'm maintaining that color code of orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. I pull them even tighter, continue to hold down the base, and then I wiggle them back and forth. While you're wiggling back and forth in between your other two forefingers, this is going to help straighten the wire out so that it's going to pass through that EZ RJ45 connector without any effort. And just keep working with it until it straightens out. You don't want to fold these in half, otherwise the copper inside, which is a solid copper, might break. Now that we've got it nice and straight, we're going to check the color code one final time. Make sure it's still that orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. Put our thumb back on the base again, and you can relatively measure this with your thumb. And then we're just going to cut off the excess with the strippers. Try and keep this nice and even. Pick up our RJ45 EZ connector. Make sure that the push tab is facing down away from you and that the pins are facing up towards you. Now you should be able to take your wires, holding them at the base, and slide it right into the connector. They're going to slide out the other side, as you can see pictured here. And now we have a nice, solid example of how it should look. If you wanted to, you could do a final check on your color coding here and make sure it's matched up. Make sure that your teeth haven't fallen out. I've had one instance where my copper teeth, one of them fell out. Only one out of thousands, so I can't really complain. But it was nice of me to be able to catch it, so just keep an eye out for these things. The other thing I would like to point out that's a big pet peeve of mine and any other person that works on a network is the plastic piece at the end needs to have the outer jacket under it. It cannot be the conductors. It's made to clamp down on that outer jacket and the thickness. It is not made to clamp down on the bare conductors without that outer jacket. So if we pull the wire out to look at it closely, you'll see that it leaves a much bigger gap without that outer jacket in there from where the wires are stripped back and straightened out. And there's just not enough real estate and mass for that clamp to do its job. And over time, if you have any kind of pressure on this wire, or if it's a cable that gets pulled in and pulled out on a regular basis, then the wires are going to pull all the way out, or maybe one of them is going to pull out, or they're going to break over time from the strain since there's no support. Once we're done with that, we can just slide the cable into the crimp tool, squeeze down until it releases. Typically they click all the way down and then you'll feel the release. You see where the razor blade cut it nice and flush to the plastic. And as I've stated, over the course of years, I've never had to replace my blade, and I've never had one of these not work properly. We have the blue jacket underneath the clamp, and we made sure that the tab was not broken. So we are good to go.